Hello, everyone. I'm Tharwat Mansour. I'm a board member in the Franco-British Network. The Franco-British Network organization is a non-profit organization in France with the objective of helping all the British people in France residing here or planning to come to have a simpler life, trying to overcome all their daily life challenges. Today, I'm doing a ChatFBN session, and I'm having with me Mrs. Sarah Vincent, an FBN service provider and specialized in taxation in France. And I'm very glad that she's with us today, and I'm sure you're going to benefit a lot from the valuable information she's going to give us. Hi, Sarah.
Hi,
We're glad to have you with us. How are you today?
I'm well. How are you?
Good. So it's a very hot topic, and I'm sure everyone is interested in this topic.
Yes, it's especially right now as tax season is around the corner.
Yes. So to start with, as a global general question, but still it is very important. What can you tell me about the differences between taxation in UK and taxation here in France?
So the main difference, the big one, is that in France, whether or not you have income, you must declare your tax. You must file a tax return, even if that tax return is going to be written zero on it. It has to be done every year. The tax return is the document that everyone's going to want to be able to see if you're entitled to certain benefits, if you haven't got employment, etc. So it's not just filing a tax return when you've got income, it's filing a tax return no matter what your situation is, you submit a tax return. That's one of the big differences between the UK and France, because the UK you only submit if you've got a source of employment or if you're self-employed or some source of income. There are other small differences, which are going to be, for example, in France, all your foreign bank accounts must be declared. You cannot forget to declare one. It's 1,500 euros a fine per year and per account not declared. And that includes all the ISAs, the life insurances, premium bonds, absolutely everything that could be considered a bank account, even if they're closed during the year of the taxes or if they're dormant or frozen.
Oh, okay. So even if if they are not active or okay.
They're not active. Anything that was closed before you do your first tax return in France is not interested to France for that tax year. But for example, this year, we're going to be declaring 2024. All the accounts that were closed, open, dormant, or frozen during that tax year must be declared, even if there's nothing in them and they're not used.
Oh,
So those are
clear
the
enough.
main two differences. And then obviously we're going to have differences like ISAs are taxed in France, whereas they're tax-free in the UK. Interest of accounts is taxed in France, whether it's tax-free in the UK on certain accounts. The allowances, it's household taxation in France compared to individual in the UK. In the UK, you can add, for example, a marriage allowance, but in France, automatically, if you're married, it's two people on a tax return. A child has to be declared on a tax return. You get an extra half part allowance, let's say, for the child. And anything to do with creating employment or giving to charities is a deduction on your tax return. You will get a tax credit if, for example, you're hiring a nanny, a cleaner, a gardener. They have to be set up correctly. You can't just pay cash and deduct from the tax.
Okay. Interesting.
It's a lot of information and there's so many differences, but really the main one is the biggest mistake that people make is not doing the return. No matter what the situation is, you do a return.
Okay.
And very much like the UK, you have to declare your worldwide income. So even if the income is not taxable in France, the tax does not belong to France, you have to tell the tax office about it.
Okay.
So those are the principal aspects.
Okay. Thank you so much. That's very clear, actually. And I think it's very important. So, but main thing, I had no idea about it, but now it's very clear for me. So thank you. Okay, clear enough. Thank you so much, Sarah, for giving us this comparison between taxation in UK and taxation in France. My second question is for the British people who are living here in France, what are the key dates that they should keep in mind related to taxation in France?
So the key dates in taxation are going to be, the first one's going to be in April when the tax season opens. So the French tax season will open for personal returns, and then there'll be 3 different closing dates. The first one is going to be for the first departments and for the paper returns. So it's going to be Department 1 to approximately 22. Then we're going to have the second lot of departments, which is 22 to approximately 60 and a bit. And then we've got the final departments that will close at a later date. So the opening will happen in April. The authorities will inform us of that date mid-end of March. And then at the same time, they will give us the closing dates, which will be between end of May onwards into June. So 3 different dates at that stage. Once the season is closed for tax season, so June's over, they're going to reopen the taxes in July for the modifications. So if you think you've made a mistake, you have the right to correct that. They have the right to the mistake. You go in, you correct your mistake, and then you resubmit. That season will be open actually from July all the way through to December. So you've got a good, nearly 6 months to be able to modify your tax return. In August, people will start receiving their tax returns and all the tax credits will be refunded. So anyone who's overpaid or who's got tax credits from nannies or from other sources will be refunded. They will then start debiting the taxes. So if your tax return, what's due, is under €300, they will debit it in one amount in September. If, however, you owe more than €300, they will put it in 4 installments over September, October, November, December. And then finally, in January, you will have a percentage, 50% of your tax credit for nanny, or for gardener, cleaner, etc. that will be given to you in advance on your next tax return. So it's very important that if you no longer have those services and will no longer have a tax credit, that you inform the French authorities so that they don't give you the money that you will then have to give back. There are some other dates which are to do with professional taxes, but those are the dates for personal taxes.
Okay, clear enough. So for everyone, I mean, it's a topic that we all use. We all have to submit our taxes. I hope you have noted down all these dates. However, if you need any help, Sarah's here to help you in refreshing your memory with the dates that she just given. And for the people who, let's say, just arrived, for the British people who just arrived to France, what are the top tips that you would tell them related to taxation here?
I would advise the first year getting someone to help, because we are allowed to make a mistake in France. If you realize you made a mistake, there is a law that was voted in 2018 called le droit à l'erreur. But if you start by making a mistake on the first year, you might realize 5 years down the line that you're making the same mistake and that you need to rectify. It's going to cost you a lot of money. So when you arrive in France, get someone to help you with your tax return. Make sure that the person that is explaining the tax return has supporting documents and information, and that obviously what they're saying is correct. And put everything clear from the year one. Sometimes it could be a matter of spending the first year or closing down those dormant accounts that are never used, just to get them out of the picture. Make it as easy as possible. If it comes to pensions, if you need to liquidate pensions, private pensions, they're not taxed the same way in France. Check before doing it. Get a fiscal advisor to advise you on which contracts with which pension companies can be liquidated in which way. Mm-hmm. And also get your information on your ISAs. Moving to France with an ISA is probably not a good idea because it's taxed in France. Find out through a fiscal advisor if there is an Assurance Vie and Assurance Vie that could come and cover the same interest as the ISA, but under the French laws. It could be applied par une retraite. It can be lots of different things which are tax deductible and could come and be more benefit towards the ISA rather than having the UK ISA in France.
Okay, so the advice is clear. They should maybe seek help first year so they avoid making mistakes and keep on repeating it year after year.
Exactly, because the first year it's all paper. So you're going to have different forms of paper based on the current situation, if there's a treaty to put in place, if there's not. So it's so much easier to start the first year with a proper clean tax return. And then if you've understood the system, the year after you do it yourself if you wish. But at least you've sat down with someone and gone over your tax return the first year. It's easier to do it right the first year and move forward than to pick up the broken pieces after.
Yeah, and is it, if I'm not mistaken, definitely, is it in French, isn't it?
Yes.
French? So avoiding mistakes is very important.
It's extremely important. And there's lots of people, whether it's an accountants or assistants that are out there that can help. There's tax advisors for those who've got different situations which are a bit higher. But it's super important just to get the first one right and make sure that your first foot in the country is done correctly and that you will not have issues after.
Thank you so much for this valuable advice. Okay, and for people, the British people who are planning to come to France, let's say in the near future, is there anything you would like to advise them they are aware of, or maybe they have to plan it, do it before they arrive here to France, related to taxation also?
I feel that for anyone who's not yet moved and has still got the opportunity to seek advice before the move, it's even better. If you can seek the advice with a fiscal advisor or as an assistant, someone who can guide you on what you got, because on top of there just being the taxation, there can be professional taxation to do with work. There can also be the fortune immobilière, which is based on the property. So if you're about to buy a property in France, which is over a certain level of value, and you've got properties elsewhere, it could mean that suddenly you have to pay this. Now, not all the time, but getting full clarity straight away before the move is so important. It will avoid moving with an ISA. It will avoid moving with dividends, which are taxed at 30% in France. You can then plan your financial aspect to avoid paying that huge first tax bill, which you could have avoided and not spent so much money on taxes. I think, before making the move, the first step, before we talk visas, before we talk healthcare, before we talk anything, fiscal advisor and advice.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Well, perfect. I think these were the very general, but still the core, the fundamental questions that we have. However, I have received few questions from our followers. So these are very specific, case related to the individuals who have sent them. So I've selected some and I'll pose them to you. So the first question sent by our follower is the following. While living in UK, I submitted a self-assessment to HMRC every year. Now I'm here in France, living here. Do I need to continue doing this?
Yes, if you still have anything in the UK, for example, if you're finding a self-assessment because you've got a company self-employed status in the UK, you continue filing your self-assessment, but you will put also that figure on your French tax return, so that France is aware of it. If, however, you're no longer self-employed in the UK or not declaring any income in the UK, then you just inform the UK that you've left the country and that you're not doing a self-assessment anymore.
Okay. Second question is, I arrived in France in October 2024. When would I need to submit my first French tax return?
If you're arriving in October 2024, the first tax return will be for the year 2024. Some of the conditions to file your first tax return will obviously be how long you've been in France, have you been there for 6 months, etc. But one of the main conditions is France your principal residence. If in October when you arrived, you declared to the UK you left and France is your principal residence and you've got a visa or residency card, you must file your tax return in the April that follows. Because when you renew that card decision, they're going to say, why did you not file tax if you were not a resident?
Okay.
So you have to submit straight away your tax return in the April, even if there's no income to declare.
Okay, clear enough. Third question is, I have rental income from property in the UK, which is taxed there. So do I need to declare it on my French tax return?
So yes, on the French tax return, you will declare the rental income from the UK, and you will then add it onto the treaty, the 2047 form, which will cancel out the double taxation. So it'll be used to do your tax rate in France, but you won't be taxed on it. So you declare it in the UK and you declare it to France, but you will not be taxed in France on it.
Yeah. As you said earlier, you have to declare everything.
Absolutely everything.
Okay, and the last question I have from our followers, does France have products similar to ISA in the UK?
There are products that are similar. There's going to be different life insurances, pension insurances. When we say insurance, it does not mean it's going to be an insurance. It's going to be an Assurance Vie, but it's actually going to be an account where you can put money on, and fiscally it will be interesting. Certain accounts, it's if you don't touch them for 8 years, you don't pay interest once you draw out the income. Other accounts, it's what you put into the account, a percentage of it can be tax deductible. So the best way on that is a fiscal advisor or your local bank and see what type of saving account they can offer that is equivalent to the ISA. But there are accounts out there, and it's just reaching out to the right person to get which account can be offered. They change yearly. There's different types of accounts. So, it's based on the time you arrive in the country that you want to find out, or ideally before you arrive, you can reach out to fiscal advisors to get advice on that.
Okay, thank you so much. I mean, these are the questions that I had in mind and I had received, but for me, it was very informative, very clear. Do you have anything else to summarize to end up this session, Sarah?
I'm just going to come back on what, like I said, get advice, make sure you're doing it correctly. Don't make a mistake, because what you think is correct might not be, and the consequences can be huge. It is easier to get it right the first time and to know what to expect, rather than a few years down the line have to catch up the mess. So seek advice, get advice, see an accountant, an assistant, financial advisor, someone who can make sure that your tax return is done correctly. And if your situation doesn't change, then of course you can use an example to continue if you feel confident. But for the first one, don't try and do it yourself.
Okay, thank you so much. Sarah Vincent, thank you so much for being with us today. I mean, definitely it's valuable information. Sarah Vincent is an administrative assistant service provider with the Franco-British Network. I'm sure that some of you has already used her services. Thank you for being with us today. For all our followers, I hope you're enjoying our ChatFBN sessions. Please stay tuned for more chat sessions with other experts also throughout 2025. If you need any help, any query, please feel free to send it to our helpline. It's a helpline. We'll answer your query free of charge. And if needed, and if you need more assistance and more details, you'll be put in connections with our service providers who will certainly help you and guide you. We're talking here about anything you need while living here in France, or when you're planning to live here in France, be it health insurance, taxation, driving licenses, importing your car, residency, visa, etc. So please don't hesitate to send us email and be in contact with us. Thank you so much. Thank you, Sarah. It was a pleasure. It was a pleasure to have you. Thank you, everyone, to our next ChatFBN session.